The late afternoon sun spilled through half-open blinds, casting golden stripes across the worn hardwood floor of Ellen Harper's living room. The air was heavy with the stillness of a Tuesday in late June, the kind of day where time seemed to pause. Marked on Libby, the steady tick of the antique clock in the mantel. Olin, a woman in her mid-50s with silver-streaked auburn Highland eyes that held a quiet, resilient sat in her favorite armchair. A lukewarm cup of chamomile tea cradled in her hands. The house, once filled with the odor of her two daughters, now grown and living in distant cities, felt like a cavern of memories since her husband David passed 4 years ago. The silence wasn't new, but today, it pressed against their chest, a subtle ache she couldn't shake. She glanced at the garden outside, where her roses drooped under the summer heat, and wondered if pruning them might fill the void. Or if she'd just surrendered the pull of a nap. The rumble of an SUV next door broke her reverie. Susan and Mark Thompson were the kind of people you could count on, always ready with a spare key or a batch of homemade cookies. Their son Ethan was visiting, a fact Ellen had gleaned from Susan's excited chatter at the mailbox day before. Ethan, in his late 20s, was a software developer based in San Francisco, a city that seemed a world away from their sleepy suburban street in Virginia. Ellen remembered him as a lanky teenager, always polite but distant, his eyes fixed on some inner horizon. Nosh caught glimpses of him through thundo, taller, broader, with a quiet confidence that hadn't been there before. His dark hair fell slightly over his forehead, and his green eyes, bright like spring leaves, held a depth she hadn't noticed in his younger years. Ellen set her tea down, the ceramic clinking softly against the side table, and decided toten the neighborhood's annual summer potluck at the community park that evening. She wasn't sure why. Maybe it wastes restless quiet of the afternoon, or a faint hunger for connection that was tethered to a phone call with her daughters. She prepared her signature broccoli salad, the recipe, a relic from her mother, and headed to the park as the sun dipped lower, painted in the sky in soft pinks and oranges. The park was alive with the hum of community. Children darted through the playground, their laughter sharp and bright, while adults clustered around picnic tables, groaning under platters of ribs, coleslaw, and watermelon. The air smelled of charcoal and soot, a nostalgic blend that tugged at Elon's heart. She found a quiet bench under a sprawling oak away from the main crowd, and settled her plate on her lap. The cool metal of the bench grounding her, a shadow fell across her, and she looked up to see a paper plate piled with food, his expression hesitant yet warm. Mindy, I sit here, it's a bit crowded everywhere else, he said, his voice low, almost shy. Elon's lips curved into O's small, her hazel eyes softening. Not at all, Ethan, plenty of room. He set his plate carefully, and she noticed the way his shoulders filled out this navy t-shirt, the faint stubble along his jaw. There was a weariness in his posture, a subtle slump that spoke of burdens she couldn't yet name. They ate in silence at first, the kind that didn't mind fill in, just the gentle clink off plastic forks and the distant squeals off kids. Olin stole a glance at his hands, long fingers, clean nails, hands that seemed made for precision, whether typing code or strumming a guitar. He caught her, and a flush crept up his neck, his hands tucked in under his thighs. Derbyshire was so unguarded, it made her heart. "Twee, your mom's cornbread is the stuff of legends," Ellen said, breaking the quiet. Her tone light but genuine. Ethan's law was soft, a sound that seemed to ease the tension in his shoulders. "Yasha's got this secret ingredient shouldn't even tell me. I've been begging for years." His green eyes crinkled at the corners, and Ellen felt a warmth spread through her. "Unexpected and secrets add to the charm," she replied, her voice teasing. He nodded, taking a bite of the cornbread, and after a moment he spoke again, his tone attentive. "You're Ellen, right? Mom and Dad talk about you a lot." She nodded, a flicker of pride in her chest. "That's me. And you're Ethan, the city boy, back for a brother." He chuckled, but there was a shadow in his eyes, a fleeting sadness that made her pause. Something like that needed a break from the grind. "Mom's cooking doesn't hurt either." The conversation flowed effortlessly. After that, a dance of small talk that felt anything but small. They laughed about neighborhoods, quirks, the HOA's absurd ban on flamingo lawn ornament, the way the street stray cat ruled like a royalty. Ethan shared a story about his to be in San Francisco, who knocked over his coffee every morning, and Ellen recounted her daughter's recent attempt at sourdough that ended in a flour-covered kitchen beneath the surface. Ellen sensed a quiet recognition. Ethan didn't treat her like a widow next door or a relic of his parents' world. He listened, Riala listened, his eyes locked on hers, as for words carried weight, and she saw him not as Susan's boy, but as a man with a thoughtful mind and a heart that seemed to carry its own quiet wounds. The sun sank lower, the sky a canvas of purple sand golds, and the crowd began to thin, but neither moved, anchored by the ease off their shared space. As dusk settled, Ethan's voice grew softer, his gaze drifting to the empty playground. "Sometimes I wonder what It's all for, he said, his words, heavy with introspection. You write build systems but, does it matter? It's just lines on S. Ellen felt a pang of recognition. She'd asked herself the same question in the long nights after David's death, when folding laundry or weeding the garden felt like chasing meaning in a void. She leaned forward slightly, her voice steady but warm. Meaning isn't always in the big picture, Ethan, it's in the small things. Way your code might help someone connect, learn, or just feel less alone. This conversation. Right now it's not saving the world, but it's making this moment matter. His eyes met hers, urchin, and a slow smile broke across his face, softening the lines of fatigue. You really think so? He asked, his voice almost a whisper. I do, she said firmly, and for a moment the world narrowed to the space between them, charged with an unspoken understanding. The next few days their paths crossed in small, serendipitous ways. Ellen would see Ethan walking his parents' agent Beagle Max or tinkering with his dad's old Ford in the driveway, his brow furrowed in concentration. They'd wave, chat over the fence about the stubborn weeds in her garden, or the sudden downpour that had soaked the neighborhood. Each encounter felt like a brush stroke painting a picture of connection. Ellen hadn't expected one humid afternoon, as she wrestled with a bag of potting soil in her front yard, sweat beating on her forehead. Ethan Appleyard, crossing the lawn with an easy stride. Nita H. Ellen, he asked, already reaching for the bag, her finger sucked from the plastic's bite, and she let out a relieved laugh. You're a lifesaver. This thing's heavier than my old couch. He hefted it effortlessly, carrying it to her flower bed, and she noticed the flex of his arms, the way his t-shirt clung to his back. The observation startled her, a flush warm in her cheeks. She wasn't used to noticing men like that, not anymore. Thanks, Ethan, she said, brushing dirt from her hands, her voice steadier. Vanch felt he leaned against the oak tree shading her yard, his expression open. No problem. You're giving these flowers some serious love. She sighed, a mix of pride and exasperation. They're needier than my girls were at 3. He laughed, the sound brightened the heavy air, and then hesitated, his fingers fidgeting with the hem of his shirt. Actually, I've got this coding project I'm stuck on, a weird bug I can't crack. Talking it out sometimes helps, but my parents just nod and change a subject when I mention tech. Would you? I mean, if you're not busy. Mind listening for a bit. His green eyes, weariness, almost vulnerable, and Ellen felt a surge of warmth touched by his trust. No coder, Ethan, she warned, a smile tugging at her lips, but I'm a great listener. Grab a chair. He pulled up a lawn chair, his laptop glowing faintly under the tree's dappled shade, and began explaining his project. He used analogish, could grasp code as a recipients, as kitchen tools, and his passion was infectious, his initial shyness melting away. Ellen didn't follow the technical details, but she felt the frustration in his voice, the spark of challenge in his eyes. She asked questions, simple ones, and he answered patiently, rephrasing when she looked at Lost. After 20 minutes he paused, tapped furiously, and leaned back with a triumphant grin. Wait, I think I got it too. Asking about the user input made messy. I had it in the wrong module. His excitement was contagious, and Ellen lied, shaking her head. I just asked Adam question. No, he said, his voice earned, his eyes locking on hers. You listened. Ellen really listened. Nobody does that anymore. Her heart swelled, a mix of pride and something softer unnamed. Their conversation shifted, deepening. Ethan asked about her life before David, her years as a library archivist, a career she'd loved but rarely spoke of. Now she shared stories of preserving fragile manuscripts, the quiet thrill of uncovering history, and listened with genuine curiosity. His questions thoughtful. Ellen felt a part of herself reawaken, a layer she'd buried in a routine and grief. The afternoon faded, the heat softening, and their talk became a quiet intimacy, a sharing of selves under the oak's gentle shadowland. Felt seen, not as a widow or unabirped, as a woman with stories and strength, and Ethan with his quiet depth seemed to find solace in her presence. A reprieve from whatever weighed on him. A few evenings later, Susan invited Alento, a small family barbecue, before Ethan returned to San Francisco. Come keep us company, Ellen, Susan said, her eyes warm. Ethan's always talking code, and we need someone to balance it out. Ellen accepted, a flutter of anticipation in her chest. The barbecue was relaxed. Just Susan, Mark, Ethan, and Ellen on the Thompson's back deck, the air rich with scent of grilled burgers and blooming jasmine. Ethan was lighter that night, laughing at his dad's corny jockish's green eyes catching the torchlight as twilight deepened. Susan and Mark went inside to clean up, leaving Ellen and Ethan alone, their drinks sweating on the table. The silence was comfortable but charged, the fireflies blinking in the air like tiny stars. Ethan broke the quiet, his voice low, almost hesitant. That talk we had under your tree, it meant a lot, Olin. She turned to him, her heart quickening at the vulnerability in his eyes. It did for me too. she admitted, her voice soft. He swirled dice in his glass, his expression distant. It's been a rough couple of years work life. It all felt empty coming back. Here I didn't expect much, but talking with you don't try to fix things, you just see me. His words hit her like a wave, stirring emotions she hadn't felt in years. Maybe I'm at a place where I value aerial connection over easy answers, she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. Life shows you how thin those answers can be. His eyes met hers, deep in searching, and the air thick in a magnetic pull drawing them closer. Lynn's heart raced a rhythm she'd forgotten. Ethan leaned forward, slightly, hand resting on the armrest between them, and she felt the warmth of him. The faint scent of his cedar cologne themament wasn't flirtatious in a shallow sense. It was profound, a recognition of shared loneliness, of being seen beyond labels, yet it was complicated. He was on her neighbor's son, and she was a widow. Her life rooted in this quiet town while his stretched across the country. Still the connection was undeniable, a spark that felt both terrifying and alive. Alon's thoughts drifted to the broader context of their moment, to the lessons she'd learned about connection and respect. She'd raised her daughter to understand consent, to value emotional honesty in relationships, and those principles applied here. To this wasn't about crossing lines, but about honoring the authenticity of their bond. You know, she said, her voice gentle, part of what makes moments like this matter is respect for each other, for where we're at in life. That's something I've always tried to teach my girls. Connection is powerful, but it's grounded in understanding boundaries. Ethan nodded, his expression thoughtful. I get that it's rare, finding someone who gets ya without needing to push things somewhere. They don't belong. His words eased her, a shared acknowledgement of their mutual care. He reached out his fingertips, brushing the back off her hand, a touch so light it was barely ether, yet it sent a jolt through her, electric and grounding. Her breath caught, but she didn't pull away. Her eyes locked on his, the touch lingered, a heartbeat off connection. Then he withdrew, his smile tinged with sadness. My flight Saturday, said, his voice heavy with real ideal, and nodded her throat tight. I know the words were simple, but the weight off their moment, their unspoken bond, its body and its limits hung between them. It wasn't about chasing some myth and impossible. It was about cherishing what was real, however brief. They sat insolence, the night air cool, the jasmine sweet and heady. When Susan and Mark returned, the spell broke, but its echo lingered, a quiet promise in the air. Than left 2 days later, there could be a handshake in the Thompsons' driveway, their eyes holding a shared secret. Thanks, Olin, he said, his voice warm. For everything save travels, she replied, her smile masking the ache in her chest. Ashi's car vanished down the street. Ellen felt not lost but gratitude, a richness that softened the quiet of her house. The clock's ticking felt less oppressive, the sunlight brighter back inside. Ellen Matatia and sat by the window, the stripes on the rug glowing softly. Her connection with Ethan hadn't rewritten her life. Beauty had reminded her that intimacy, emotional or otherwise, could bloom in unexpected corners. That vulnerability was a strength, and that being seen even for a moment was a gifted. Echoed the lessons she'd shared with her daughters, that relationships, no matter their form, thrived on respect, honesty, and the courage to honor each other's journey.